back.
Yeah, mic check, mic check, mic check. Man, we're back. We are here. We are officially live, man. Welcome back to Kicking the Real Podcast. I am your host, Andy Diosa. If you're a first time listener, thank you for being here. And as always, if you're a multiple time listener, thank you for being here. It is the end of the year, 2025. I was about to say 2026, 2025 coming to a close. And we had a lot of stuff going on here in December with MLS Cup. We had the World Cup draw. And I have a very, very special guest in the building with me today that was at both of them to discuss a little bit of everything around MLS Cup in Fort Lauderdale and the FIFA 2026 World Cup draw in Washington, D.C. He's my guy. I'm gonna let him almost tell you what he does because he wears so many hats. I don't want to skip over anything, but if you know the soccer space, if you're on the social media space, if you're following along, you've seen him, you've consumed his content all over the place. My guy Favian Renkel here, checking in from New York City. Fabi, my brother, thanks for coming through the kick with me. How you feeling today?
Hey man, no, it's a blessing to finally be on this show. I've watched a whole bunch of episodes, so I'm a fan. So I'm excited to be here. But no, thank you for having me on. Yeah, last week was crazy. I mean, I went to the LAFC Vancouver match, and then it was then moved to New York, and then it was go to DC, and then it was the final in Miami, right? So crazy 2 weeks. A little exhausted, but that's how it is at the end of the year. You got to cram it all in. The craziest part of all the travel was DC was snowing, and then you went down to Miami and it was 85, and I was like, this is crazy. Like, how do people plan for this? There's no way. But no, that's the East Coast thing. Like people be going out to Miami for a couple of days and going back up. So it's pretty normal. But yeah, man, crazy vibes. Honestly, a once in a lifetime experience of the World Cup draw. And really, it's been a crazy 2 weeks. That's for sure.
Yeah, man. It's the grind of the traveling, going to different places is one thing, but the fact that everything kind of like culminated at the same time is like, oh snap, this is one thing after another. And then you mentioned the travel is funny because I was saying that about the Whitecaps. Like they went from playing at BC Place indoors to playing in San Diego on a night that for them probably wasn't that cold, but a San Diego night gets cold in California terms. And then you go to South Florida and it's 82, 85 degrees, and you're like, how the hell am I, adjusting to all this? But it is part of what makes MLS so quirky and great at the same time. Fabi, before we get into any of that stuff, I do like to start with intros for my guests and kind of just give a little bit of background so people could get familiar with what you do and introduce yourself to the masses. So my first question is always, how did you get started in this space? What was your motivation, and kind of a little bit about what you're doing right now?
Yeah, look, I grew up as a Latino American in the Bay Area in California, and I had a whole bunch of friends who didn't like soccer, so I always had to sell soccer to them in a way that Americans cared. And then there was a space where I was like, wait, I'm actually kind of good at this, like let me go ahead and try to convince people to watch soccer. So that's kind of how I thought about coming into the scene. And fast forward 5 years today, that's exactly what I'm still doing. But now I have the backing of a World Cup and Messi in MLS, and MLS growing as much as it possibly can at the moment. So yeah, that's actually how I got into the scene. I started off as a podcaster, and then I went into a writer, and then kind of doing this like social hosting, and then basically everything, every single hat that's possible, right, to try to grow soccer in America. And that's just the underlying theme of me being in this scene. And now a lot of people come to me for advice on getting World Cup tickets, so that's kind of how I'm kind of making my name in this new World Cup era. And I joined a company named Kickbase out here in New York, where we're a fantasy manager app, and we're launching a product in the United States. So currently eventually in the next couple of months, there'll be La Liga and Bundesliga. But a lot of you guys know about fantasy soccer and fantasy sports, so it's going to be an app where you can have it all in one place.
That's awesome, man. I love to hear it. Definitely. I love that you mentioned the part of growing the game because it's something that you focus on so much, and it's on my end. It's something that I'm like, it's not even my job, but at the same time, it is all of our responsibility at some capacity, right? Whatever way you see it. But I've said this, I think from when I started the podcast, the media space, especially when you're talking about MLS specifically, but soccer in general, there's so many avenues that people could take in order to be part of it. Like you mentioned, podcast writing, just different apps and things of that nature. But everybody kind of brings their own approach to it, which is what I love, because in a space that people say, oh, things are competitive, and like for the most part, I've seen that a lot of people in our space are very collaborative or just like very supportive of everybody, and it's cool to see that those steps being taken, whether it's somebody that's been on TV or somebody that's been broadcasting for 20 plus years. Like the realm of MLS specifically is so, I think, close that it's cool to see when people start doing something and then they say, yo, perhaps I'll do this, perhaps I'll do that. It was literally the premise of me starting the show, just going from writing to like having more of a platform that's visual, that's audio. So I do love that, man. In terms of you being able to, I don't even want to say juggle because juggle doesn't even sound right, but in terms of just doing so many different things, how have you seen that progression kind of move forward, where it's like I could do a little bit of this writing here, but I could do a little bit of this podcast stuff here, a little bit of the social. How's that kind of work for you?
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of like you have to maneuver yourself in a way where you stay into the know every single time you choose a new hat, right? Writing was something that you get your professional backing from, so people respected you. Podcasting was something that could, you can talk to a whole bunch of masses and talk to a whole bunch of fans directly. And then being a social media content creator, that's kind of the new wave. Like when I started this journey of helping to grow the soccer in America, the number one thing was podcasting, writing, and basically kind of older media. Nowadays, you have these content creators for Sunday League footy that are legit superstars. Like you have guys like, shout out to Memo Horchata in the Bay Area. Like this guy is a Sunday League goalkeeper and he's like a superstar in that scene, right? Like the whole content creation game is changing right before our eyes. And you just have to be able to maneuver yourself in a way where you're constantly changing and being in the know. Of course, coming back to your roots by doing podcasts and writing, but being able to put on a different hat to make sure that you can kind of guide the masses in a way to where the game is growing. And I've been very lucky to be kind of a soccer content chameleon, because in a way you kind of have to be all shapes and all sizes to kind of get as many fans together under one umbrella.
Yeah, no, it's 100% true, and that goes to a larger conversation about how media just kind of shifts and things like that. But I had this conversation yesterday. Like I started at a newspaper, and now I'm working at a tech company who is having conversations about AI. Like just the range of that is absolutely insane. But with time, the way that media shifts, it's like almost expected because you don't know what direction it's heading in, and you also have to be ready to adapt in those situations. So it is cool. If you could put a timeline on it, how many years have you been doing it altogether?
Yeah, I would say when I first appeared on a podcast was about 5 years ago. So that's when I hopped on a pod. So it's been about 5 years, and in those short 5 years, I've already seen media change 2 or 3 times. I mean, it was graphics at one point. Now it's short form video, and then now it's streams and content. It's so crazy to see what the meta is every single time for the next new year of media. And it's not going to change. I mean, unfortunately, it's going to even change faster, right? It's not going to stay in that old type of newspaper media, like you were saying, where you have, a whole night to prepare the paper, right? Or you have a couple of hours to prepare the paper. But nowadays, it has to be instant. It has to be, your tweet is almost as valuable as that article, I want to say, because you can get that tweet out so fast. And it happens all the time. They just use it for the article, right? So it's interesting how the game is changing, and you just have to be able to hop on every single train.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it. In terms of maybe this weekend was it. What has been your favorite thing that you've done so far?
My favorite thing that I've done so far, man, that I think for me, I love doing sit down interviews. So if I can get the chance to talk to a player one-on-one, get to know them better, I think that is my favorite part of this job that I'm in, because I got to sit down, I mean, when I was not the biggest content creator, not the biggest journalist, with Evander one-on-one, and then see his career progress within MLS after that, and knowing all the things he told me about his childhood and his background, and how I try to amplify that the most, and seeing his progression as a superstar in this league, and as a face of the league. That was something really cool to see, and almost like helping ignite that boom in his career is something that I always love seeing. Another guy, for example, Max Arfston, I interviewed him when he was a Quakes 2 player, and throughout his career have had several interviews with him, so always seeing the progression of these young kids I've had guys who have reached out to me, hey, I was your follower 5 years ago, and now they're on the Quakes, so it's something awesome to see the progression of players. So my favorite thing for sure is definitely sitting down and getting to know people like as a person one-on-one, and then having them become a friend and then seeing their progression.
Yeah, and to my point earlier, like about how things, everybody has a different approach. At the end of the day, storytelling is at the core of all of these approaches, which is what makes that cool. Because especially in a league like MLS, where you could see players at a young age, kind of, show those signs of they're going to be able to progress, but unlike other countries, they're not gone right away. They're still going through the system and progressing, in the academies in MLS Next Pro. And it's like when you get to see that from the beginning and kind of talk to them, or in your case, if you get to talk to an Evander who ends up being an MVP caliber player in the season every year, it's like, oh, this is kind of amazing. And I 100% agree, man. And with MLS, you get to follow these storylines of players, and even if they maybe go to a different team within the league, it's cool to kind of have that storytelling aspect. So I love that answer. I love the background that you gave, man. I don't have to tell you this, but I will anyway, because I do it all the time to my friends. Like, keep going. Obviously, big supporter of everything going, man. And we're all here to cheer each other on. If that's not what you're doing, that's fine, but that's not my approach. So,
Well, 100%. It's always my thing is it's what's the point of being at the top if you got no friends? Like the biggest thing is to bring your friends up with you.
right. You got to stay true. You got to keep eating your Takis and all that fun stuff, man. But all right, let's talk about it, man. MLS Cup. I think us in MLS is funny how we always try to do predictions and different things of that sort. And at some point, I think everybody's always like, well, it's just going to end up being Miami, right? And that's what we've been saying since Lionel Messi got to MLS. It's just going to end up being Miami. And it had not ended up just being Miami until this MLS Cup. And the way that Miami was able to do this, there's so many factors of how Miami won MLS Cup. But we'll focus on the game itself, how they beat Vancouver 3-1 down in Fort Lauderdale. You were there, you were around the scenes. I'm sure it was I joke all the time that stadium has zero like aura, zero alert, because it's literally just bleachers, bro. Like I love the fan base over there because they bring that South American passion to it and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it is South Florida. It's in the middle of nowhere, Fort Lauderdale. It's hot. It's bleachers. Like, it's a very just put together stadium. That being said, I'm sure the atmosphere for MLS Cup was amazing. So I'm gonna pass it to you and just talk a little bit about that atmosphere of being in South Florida around the game before the game even started.
Honestly, I'm gonna say this, and I would get a lot of slack for this, but to me, maybe it didn't feel like an MLS Cup, and the reason why is because it almost felt like Messi, Busquets, Jordi Alba, Suarez. They've all been there many times before, so it was almost so mechanical from them that there was no jitters even for the fans. Like, nobody in that crowd was nervous. And I won't even say that on the Vancouver side. A lot of those fans didn't even seem nervous because Thomas Muller in another final, like it almost felt like both sides were super confident in their team that it felt like a regular MLS season game. And I hate to say it, it was cool. The fans are great. Even the Vancouver fans yelling at the walk-in where, that famous walk-in with Messi and Suarez. It's just from the parking lot into the stadium, like I never knew that, so seeing all those fans just yell at them while they're going into their own stadium was something fun to see. But in terms of atmosphere, in terms of, Miami really integrating that team into their city and making it feel like an activation, unfortunately, out of all the MLS Cups I've been to, it felt like it was the least amount of activations or anything else I've seen. And I don't even think Miami had a parade or any sort of celebration that the Galaxy even didn't have a parade, but they had a really big celebration in their Dignity Health Sports Park where it was well done. All the players got to talk to the fans. Unfortunately, that didn't happen in Miami because it's like clockwork for these guys. They've won so many trophies. Did you see the video of Messi celebrating with all the guys? He looked like he wanted to go home, so. It's a blessing and a curse when you have such a great player like that, or great players in MLS. MLS Cup isn't to the point of a trophy where they're going to be crying on the field. I mean, I was actually shocked seeing Jordi Alba on the floor, but I think that felt more about the moment. But in terms of the atmosphere, the fans are great, both sides of the fans. But maybe, like you said, the stadium's just bleachers. It almost felt like a little. It felt like it needed a little more. A little bit. I know in Columbus there was a big thing that always sticks out to me where the buildings had "Go Crew" like literally the lights in the building spelled out "Go Crew." And that was something that I was like, oh shoot, this is an MLS Cup, you know. I saw people in front of their houses with little "Go Crew MLS Cup" signs, you know, like these little things that make the atmosphere feel a lot more grand. Were maybe missing in Fort Lauderdale, and hopefully that changes with the new stadium.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said all that, man, because you're somebody that's been to multiple MLS Cups and also bigger games around the league in different cities. So I kind of felt that too, and I didn't know because I wasn't there. But just from being, I had to go onto that stadium a handful of times prior to even Messi's second game there, and it still seems like, yeah, sure, it's a big deal because it's Messi and all these world legends. But I will give LAFC and the Galaxy credit, like in a city like LA and being able to host MLS Cups and make it feel like a big deal, opposed to like a city like Miami, even though the game's not in Miami, it's like these are major cities that have so many things happening. And I think to your point is great because maybe the city doesn't feel the magnitude of those events of that caliber in a city like, especially our Basel's right there. So it's like there's so much happening in Miami, whereas like Colombia is obviously going to go all in if they're hosting MLS Cup. LAFC went all in when they were hosting MLS Cup because it was their first one. The Galaxy, even though they've been there, like it felt like a huge, massive deal because it had been so long since they had been there. So, I mean, I do understand that, and I think that's a lot like a larger conversation, obviously, with how Miami is constructed. But to that point, like everything you said about the nerves and stuff like that is like spot on because it was reflected on the field, right? I think to shift over to the game a little bit. I think Vancouver had done such a great job all season. And this is the one thing I loved about this MLS Cup was that like these were hands down like two of the best teams in MLS all year.
Easily, yeah.
Like, easy, great culmination of how the season was, the two top teams playing each other. And Vancouver had been so good. Like the way they played in San Diego, obviously that win over LAFC is monumental for them. It felt like they were timid going into this game when the ball actually started rolling in the beginning. And you know, when you score an early own goal, it's hard to bounce back from. But Vancouver did show that resolve, and it was like they weren't going to go down easy. But it seemed like they kind of like were nervous to the moment, knowing that hey, like we're playing against Messi and last game, Alba's last game. Like these are crazy stakes. It's almost like yeah, sure, everybody internally in Vancouver's dressing room or on that organization staff, the 2,000 fans that went from Vancouver to South Florida. Salute to them for doing that and the organization for setting stuff up. But it's almost like we're supposed to lose this game. I'm sure they thought they were going to win, but it's like we're supposed to this is the culmination of Messi and Miami getting to where they're supposed to be. Whereas like we're here because we kind of took the league by storm. And I feel like the game played out that way, which is kind of ironic how the storyline, you know, sometimes in finals you might get crazy things that happen. And the storyline played out as if you would have predicted something like to the T. It was like, yeah, Miami's going to pressure. Vancouver might get nervous, and you give Messi a chance or two, and he's going to make you pay on both of those, right? And it's like literally what happened on the field.
Yeah, look, I mean, if you take a look at Rodrigo De Paul's goal, where he's literally complaining that the ball is so far ahead of him, and then all of a sudden, in the middle of complaining, Messi gives him a through ball, and the game switches like that. You know, it's wild to me that it just took half a second really to really change this game. And Vancouver was unfortunately a post. I mean, they hit the post 3 times, and they had all the momentum in the world, and they had a chance to kind of take over this game. But you're right. If you ran a simulation about how the game was going to go, it went exactly that way. That's for sure. So, yeah, that was kind of crazy, and it just went like that. So
yeah, I think the funny thing too is like somebody like Andres Cupas who had been amazing. Like I think he played such a good game in that San Diego game in the conference final. Like he has one little mistake because he's a player that even when Vancouver got rid of Pedro Vite, like he kind of stepped up and was like, "Don't worry, I'm gonna take care of this midfield." He has this one quick mistake, and it's funny because you don't. Out of all the players on that team, he would be the one that I did not expect that from, who has the experience on the international stage and CONMEBOL. Like he's played Messi multiple times, and like you said, all it takes is that one quick moment, a quick turnover, and now it's like, okay, Messi's through. It's incredible because all you could talk about through sports everywhere is like experience matters so much, and that's literally what we saw, right? We saw a team that was not really nervous about going into this game because it's like, hey, if we just do what we need to do, and granted, I'm gonna even say this, I don't even think Miami played a great game, but they just got away with being a smarter, more composed team. Like if you start taking things away, right? The Vancouver goal was like peak Jesper Sorensen attack mode, like played into Brian White, played out to the wing, like if they were doing that from minute one, it might have been a different story. If that triple
Right.
post doesn't happen, it might have been a different story. So there were for sure those moments, but it almost still felt like one switch of the ball, and it's like even Messi and not being like the standout player of the game, and then you look back at it, you're like, oh, he was like literally part of every goal, and that's all it takes. Like he doesn't have to be that guy anymore. He could literally just be like the facilitator, and he makes it happen. And all of a sudden, you're up 3-1 and celebrating. So it was
And,
almost incredible.
and if honestly, if you and me know this very, very much, it almost felt like a CONMEBOL game.
Yeah.
Like they chopped it up so much. Rodrigo de Paul was in the face of the ref since minute one. Messi was even in the face of the ref, as you saw in the video, and it almost felt like these Argentinian guys just got an Argentinian team and put him in MLS. And then in a final, they treated it just like they did in the World Cup final. They chopped it up. They made it hard to do anything offensively. And their experience just shined through and made it so that, a final is just like a regular game for them. So, no, 100% shout out to Miami and how they basically hindered the best offensive team we saw in MLS and really played the game that they wanted to play by chopping it up.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I do think on the Vancouver side, like Thomas Miller, clearly not 100% healthy, which kind of sucks. If he was at a better health, it would have maybe seen a little bit different. But just like the year that Vancouver had, and I don't know how many times I've talked about it on this podcast, like it was incredible from Sebastian Berhalter to Takioka to like Tristan Blackman, defender of the year. Like they all deserve all the credit in the world, and you can see how much it hurt players like that they weren't able to get over the hump. They were right there too, so. Take nothing away from what they did, Jesper Sorensen. Like everybody deserves all the credit over there in Vancouver. But for Miami, I think for the first time this playoff, I made this joke. Like this is the first time I saw Javier Mascherano coach that team when the playoffs started. And it was like the perfect timing because if Luis Suarez, who I know is your boy, I want to ask you about, does not get suspended in that Nashville game, like we might be talking about a completely different thing with this Miami team. But like the fact that he's like, we're gonna play Silvetti, we're gonna play Tadeo Allende, who ends up setting an MLS record with all these goals, 9 goals, I believe it was in total. Passes.
We're talking about Tadeo Allende. We're not talking about Zlatan. We're not talking about Vela. We're talking about Tadeo Allende.
Right. And it's like these things is exactly, I think all the criticisms you could have had of Miami throughout the runs of maybe them losing in the playoffs last year early to this season. To me, it always was like, what is this team's identity? Because if it's not Messi, if it's not Suarez, if it's not any of these big players, like who do they turn to? And I think that was starting to be a big part of like why people were like, maybe, I don't know, like we haven't seen it from Mascherano. And then like the playoffs hit and this team turned into the monster that everybody feared. It was like, we're good. Like Suarez not even on the team. He's on the bench right now. And we're having Agenda and we're having all these players kind of contribute to add to the fact that you have somebody like Jordi Alba who has a magnet on his boot with Messi wherever he's on the field. Sergio Busquets looked his age throughout this run, and they were still able to get contributions out of him and make sure that he wasn't a downfall to that. So like seeing the evolution of Miami in front of our eyes I think it's kind of scary for the league because they looked as good as they had all ever since Messi has arrived, and I think they'll be even better next year with some of these older pieces leaving.
Yeah, honestly, I agree with you 100%. They're going to have OP slots. They're going to have and ways to go ahead and try to be that team that is going to be a powerhouse now. And honestly, Javier Mascherano was on the hot seat all year because he didn't put a stamp on this team. And he literally put the stamp on the team at the perfect time. And you might have used the, Suarez suspension to his benefit, to say, okay, we're going to try something new. And man, oh man, was these MLS teams not expecting it throughout the whole playoffs. I mean, they had to figure out who Silvetti was and look at his highlight reels because they didn't have no idea who this guy was, right? Baltazar Rodriguez, another guy who was kind of thrown into that starting 11. It truly was weird to see and kind of fascinating to see how different, if you look at the first starting lineup for this team to the last one, how completely different this team was with just 1 year of kind of playing underneath Javier Mascherano. And credit to him because I was really critical of him too when they bowed out of all those competitions this year.
Yeah, no, I think you weren't alone there. Like, I think everybody was, and with rightfully so, because if you see a team once again centered around Lionel Messi, you have these super high expectations. But what Messi's been able to do in MLS, and then in turn, like what he was able to do in the playoffs. I mean, he was absolutely incredible in the playoffs as well. Not just the fact that he led that team to MLS Cup, but he had his say with the postseason run, a 15 goal contribution, 6 goals, 9 assists. Like on top of the fact that Allende sets that record beating Carlos Ruiz, it's like you have these contributions from all over, and that's what Miami was lacking. And I have to give credit to Javier Mascherano because I didn't believe he was going to be able to do that, and B, to have the ability to say, hey, like the part of it is that like you're talking about former teammates and friends that he's having to have these tough conversations with. Like that's the part that I was like, maybe this is not going to work out. But to your point earlier about making like an Argentina Conmebol type of game, is like they quite literally took that approach, and I think that was a super big credit to what Mascherano had been able to do. Up to that point, we hadn't seen it, but he figured it out at the perfect time for Miami, which is kind of incredible. It's a little bit to Luis Suarez, like not that it's surprising to me that they were better with him not as a starter, but what did you think about that? Obviously, you being of Uruguayan roots, and I know that being a guy that you've cheered for over the years for sure.
No, I was shocked they didn't put him in for at least a minute, because I thought possibly it could be his last game in pink, right? So I really was shocked. I was thinking they were going to put him in the last minute once they scored that third goal, but they eventually didn't. But yeah, no, I think the time is right. I mean, if Messi's ever injured, 100% Suarez starts in that same kind of, facilitator role, because we saw it, I think, a year ago in Leagues Cup where he had Miami playing with Campana and everybody, and Suarez being the facilitator, and he was doing a pretty good job of it in MLS. So if Messi ever picks up a knock or needs some extra rest, I think there is a place for Suarez on this team. I just don't think, unfortunately, it's with Messi on the same 11 with him anymore.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, it's at some point, right? Like, it's like, okay, maybe this part of the story is over. And like I mentioned, in terms of like Sergio Busquets looked like he was dragging his legs out there for basically all of MLS Cup, but it's like they were able to get the best out of those players when they needed it. Maybe not particularly in that moment, but like how many times has Sergio Busquets picked his head up and been able to pick out a pass to Messi as he's done over his whole career? Like, he's scored 20 goals in the postseason combined, and I know that's because you have a best of 3 first round series, but at the end of the day, it's like I felt like every game progressively in the playoffs they were getting better and stronger, and it was like, oh, this is going to be an issue because the Nashville series, maybe they gave them a little bit of a scare. I wouldn't say too much of it because they win game 2, but then it's like to beat Cincinnati 4-0 at TQL Stadium and then to bounce back and beat New York City 5-1, a New York City team that had been playing really well. It was just, I think it was super telling to the point that I started it off with. It's like we all wanted to say, oh, maybe, I picked Vancouver to win MLS Cup, so I feel happy that they at least made it. But it's like, oh, maybe this is going to be FC Cincinnati's year, or LAFC with Sonny and Bawanga, and it's like it ended up being the team that everybody probably thought would win it. They just didn't want to like fully put in their all their coins there. But I say it like Rodolfo Pizarro and Blaise Matuidi had to walk, so Lionel Messi and Tadeo Allende had to run. So it's a combination of what Miami. And it's so funny that if you're watching on YouTube, I got the black and pink jersey on today out of respect. It's so funny how like the freedom to dream is their slogan, and this is a little more big picture now, but I think people's beef with Miami is obviously the superstars going, and I think that's great for MLS. You need a team that people might have to dislike a little bit, but seeing how this has happened and having David Beckham be at the core of that, I think is one of the coolest things that you could kind of talk about. Obviously, it's Lionel Messi, and that kind of is his own conversation. But Beckham being somebody who transformed the league as a player, who won MLS Cup as a player, who has now won it as an owner. You see how excited, how emotional they are. The Moss brothers, like the team is kind of growing at the speed that they want to in terms of profile, in terms of just relevance, not just in MLS. Now you're going to talk about them being in this CONCACAF tournament again, where they're going to be expected to make a run. You're gonna have these different exposures. I know they're playing some friendlies down in South America this offseason. Like little things are happening, but isn't it kind of cool to see how they finished this little? I don't know. I would say this is like for the 1.0 of Miami. Yeah. Like to go into this new stadium, they're gonna have a star over their logo. They're gonna raise the banner or whatever they decide they're gonna raise over there, because MLS does whatever they want when it comes to trophies and celebrations. But it's almost like how monumental this winning MLS Cup in this way at this time is for Miami cannot even be quantified. But how cool is it for you to see kind of where that, I guess, whole project is, from the freedom to dream to them being on top of the league right now, finally?
Yeah, honestly, everybody in that front office can now they can release that breath, because to be honest, That was the elephant in the room. I mean, you can do everything, but if you don't have an MLS Cup from this team or from this project, it's going to 100% be a failure. I don't care how many US Open Cup finals or Leagues Cup finals you went to. If you don't have that star over that crest, everyone's going to look back and say, man, Messi was a complete flop in MLS. And now they're not going to have to worry about that. And now everything that they win is just extra. And coming into the stadium, having players that are now going to leave Miami and be better off than when they came is something that Miami did a little well with under Tata Martino, and now we'll do it under Javier Mascherano. That's a part of it too, in my opinion. I think if you can produce talent, show it to the grand showcase of the world, playing next to Miami, make a profit off that player, just like they did with Diego Gomez, that's a big part of marketing for your brand too. And I think you're going to see that with Silvetti, with Allende going back to whatever club he goes to. You're going to see, oh, these guys played in Miami and they won a trophy alongside Messi. It's going to be good for the brand, even past Messi. So I personally think if they start churning guys out again, the club's just going to grow from its own roots at the same time as the Messi side of it growing too. So no, definitely the front office is doing a good job. They're balancing the old European stars with the young South American talent, and I think every single team in MLS should be doing some sort of hybrid. Bring in a European guy, but still showcase that European guy next to your young talented players. And Miami is 100% making the rule book of how to showcase that.
Yeah, and I think as much pushback as they get in terms of people, I don't know, wanting to criticize the approach or saying like how they built this super team, like they did it as far as we know within the rule constructions, but it's also like this should be the ambition to your point that the teams are having. Like, why are you the Red Bull or NYCFC in a market like New York not being able to attract these bigger players? I mean, NYCFC did it in their early days, right? And they won an MLS Cup, so you can't forget things like that. But it's almost like this is to show you how the teams can be ambitious, right? It can't just be LAFC and
Right.
Miami or now Vancouver with times, but like you could look around the league and pick a team like the Fire who could potentially land a big star. Like I think this is opening and expanding what MLS is going to progress to in the future, which is great. Maybe the fans and players and teams might not like the fact that it's Miami and Messi, but I think overall it's great for the growth of the league to kind of have this moment because, as you mentioned, this is what they wanted. This is what they were going for. Now it's like, okay, we got that out of the way. Now let's see what we could progress this to. And you're spot on in terms of players going out and showing that brand to the world, right? It's not just that it's Lionel Messi. And now it's Inter Miami is an entity that's known and is going to continue growing because the profile of this team obviously is super boosted with Messi. But if the fact that you have Javier Mascherano as a coach, the fact that you have these moments happening, like they've been to finals, like Messi is, of course, is a cheat code, but I think they're now lining themselves to be in such a good position after Messi because of MLS Cup. If they had not won MLS Cup, then the pressures and all that, those conversations are a bit different. But I think this is such a big deal for Miami, and I think even a bigger deal for MLS in the way that they're going to kind of use this to kind of transform a bit in the future.
No, I 100% agree. I feel like the biggest thing is to be a brand without those European stars, and like you said, Miami is going to be okay without Messi, and with that stadium, with Moss and Beckham, and their history now, I think they'll be perfectly fine moving forward.
Hey, salute to David Beckham, man. He's done pretty well for himself in his life. I mean, he has a few things going for him. So that guy moves mountains in LA, moves mountains in Miami, moves mountains in England. Not a bad little rap sheet for that dude. But anything else you want to touch on MLS Cup, MLS season? It is such a long year. There's so many storylines, but we just put a bow on it and it finally being done and us getting a few, I guess, weeks off before it starts again.
Yeah, honestly, the best thing that could have happened for Inter Miami fans was losing that Leagues Cup final because that showed Javier Mascherano that he had to do more than just do the status quo. And I think everything else that happened after that is deserved.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I mean, you obviously learn, especially I think in terms of how they approach the game. They're so, you know how they are, man. They play with this chip. They play with this like we're supposed to win everything, and of course they believe that. So them losing that final is kind of like this wasn't supposed to happen, and it
Right.
definitely I think woke up a little bit of like we need to kind of shift this a little bit if we we know MLS Cup is the goal, right? Like
Right.
everything else is kind of secondary there. And even the run that they had in CONCACAF tournament this year, they learned from that, and that's going to set them up perfectly for next year. And I do have to give a shout defensively to Miami, because the reason that I didn't believe in them in the playoffs is because I thought defensively they were going to be, as they have been, pretty vulnerable throughout their stay with these players, and they looked great. They looked great defensively. I mean, I don't want to say they were the shutdown defense, but they did a really good job shutting down some massive stars in MLS, and
Yeah.
that's to the credit of, once again, maybe Luis Suarez. Because if you have Luis Suarez and Lionel Messi and Sergio Busquets on the field at the same time, defensively you might be dealing with a little bit of trying to cover some holes, some patches, but they put it all together at the right time, man. So I like, as much as, once again, people might want to hate, like, you can't really hate on the way that they did this, because they did it in convincing fashion, and I think that might be I guess the biggest deal of how this happened. Also, like, the fact they hosted this game, and the regular season matters, man. Like, people like to talk about how the regular season is so long, but like, playing for these points, and it was such a crazy East this year that, like, they finished in, was it third or second, something like that,
Right.
and they're still able to host MLS Cup against a team that finished in second in the West, tied for the same amount of points as first. So all of those little intricacies of MLS and how much these, like, regular season games do end up mattering at the end is such a big deal. So I feel like it wrapped up the MLS season, like, I think the best way possible, honestly.
Yeah, and that home field advantage that you bring up would have been crucial. I mean, I don't think Miami or Messi has done well in the Pacific Northwest. Imagine if it was flipped, right? So the regular season does matter a ton.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, salute to the Vancouver fans, man. I love the fact that they say that's the longest trip in MLS to make. So salute for them being able to get down to Fort Lauderdale, and when I was in San Diego for the Western Conference Final, they were out there in abundance too, man. Then I feel bad because that was Thanksgiving week travel, so I know the tickets from Canada to the States were not cheap, but they supported their team through and through. I was actually up in Vancouver earlier this year for like a regular season game, and it was good energy. I got to actually see them in Mexico City when they played Puma, so like that, they were supporting that team everywhere, man. And I think they have a really good thing going for them with Jesper Sorensen and the core they have there. So shout out to the Vancouver Whitecaps, man.
Yeah, and they're making a little announcement once this podcast is over. So, shout out to them and I wish them the best.
Things are happening. We'll switch over real quick to the World Cup draw, I guess. We're not going to talk about anything that happened at the World Cup draw here. So just get that out of your mind. But Favi was in DC present. How was that, man? Because I'm sure that it was chaotic. I'm sure it was cold. Just the energy around that draw, because I think people are, I don't want to say naive, but I think they're not as conscious of how much of a big deal this is and how many people this attracts, the amount of media members that are there, the amount of people, the amount of interest. Like this is a different ballgame at a completely different magnitude than I feel that we've seen in a while.
Yeah, look, MLS Cup, I think the media members were like at least 300 to 500. And then just alone for the FIFA World Cup draw in DC, we were looking at, maybe about 1,200 media members, right? And of course, having that many media members in such a small venue, you have to find ways of getting everybody to be able to cover the event, right? So, no, I mean, it was insane. I was up at 6 a.m. and I knew, because it was a FIFA event, that we had to get our credentials and that we had to go ahead and make sure we got in, because they told us the day before that it was going to be tough to get in. And if you've ever been to DC, you would know that they shut down streets and they shut down highways. You almost are better off walking to wherever you need to, because you can't get the Ubers in or anything like that. So we woke up at 6. We left to go to the venue. All the streets were shut down because the Secret Service were coming in. And we had to walk 20 minutes to our destination in the snow. And then once we got there, we waited in about 2 hours of snow to get into cover the World Cup draw, right? So that was a one-of-a-lifetime experience. It was also FIFA employees. It was FIFA volunteers. Everybody had to wait to go through Secret Service in the snow. And imagine this line at 6 a.m. of at least 300 people waiting to get in. It was an event that, man, all your favorite media members from all over the world were there. And it was a great opportunity for upcoming journalists in the States, and just to kind of meet people and see the grand magnitude of this event. But yeah, it was a blessed time. I got to see a whole bunch of people that I knew from MLS that are now working with FIFA. I even walked into the Waldorf Astoria, and you could see, former players and presidents of federations just casually hanging out. Like it was almost like this. exclusive club. Once you're in, you're in. Like you're just a normal person of this big old soccer scene. It doesn't matter what you do or cover. You're just like there in the World Cup. It's almost like this elevated status of oh, I'm covering a World Cup. Like this is a big deal. So no, 100%. It was really cool just to be there and experience that event and get to meet a whole bunch of people from all over the world too.
Yeah, it's a great way to kind of put it together, because the amount of people that do come together for an event like this and that continue. I mean, they've been having World Cup events since they announced, the three countries hosting. Then they announced the logos. Like everything for FIFA is an event, and those events get pretty crowded for media. I remember I went to one here in LA, and I was like, this is insanity. Like shuttles, lines, like
Yeah.
different rooms. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be at a whole different level. But in terms of let's talk about the interest around it, because the World Cup is gonna garner interest from all over the place, right? But you talk so much about the growth of the game and this being such a big stage, and you being in these spaces and on social media and putting out this different content. What have you seen and how crazy it's been? Because the ticket process, people might have not been aware that it is quite literally a process. It's not just like,
Right.
I'm going to buy tickets and go to this game. But everybody is almost like so on edge already, and it's still December. Like this is, we have a long way to go, and this is how it works for all the World Cups. But what have you seen in terms of interest and how people have been maybe interacting with you or trying to reach out to you, and just how much this is gaining steam so quickly now?
Yeah, no, one of the craziest things I've ever seen. People reached out to me about Qatar, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I just bought like 4 or 5 tickets, and I went to games pretty easily. Like they were giving out tickets for free, basically." Completely different story today. I mean, this is something where I've never seen the amount of fandom and just interest in buying a ticket alone at a certain price point that's obviously already expensive at retail, right? Um, you know how people are saying they're not going to see the two small teams sell out? I don't know, man. I think we're gonna see this craziness for any sort of game. Maybe the dynamic pricing is gonna come back down a little bit for those games, but I still think there's gonna be so many Americans that just go to any game. It's not gonna matter to them. Everybody has a friend or an uncle or a tia or a grandparent or unos abuelos that talk about the '94 World Cup and how much it meant to them. My dad says the same story, how he went to Stanford Stadium and saw the World Cup, and I always ask him who played. He doesn't remember. He doesn't care. All he cares, he's like, I went to a World Cup. And I bet you anything, there's a lot of Americans that feel that FOMO, that feel that want to go to a World Cup just to say they went to a World Cup. The vibes. I mean, I keep on hearing that FIFA's going to have 30 Super Bowls for each day in every host city. They're going to have so many lit parties in every single city, and they're going to have so many activations. This is such a big scale, even compared to the Super Bowl, because the Super Bowl is one city, or the NBA All Star Game is one city. Everybody flies into that city. It's crazy, but this is going to be all over the country, and the interest is just going to skyrocket. I've seen companies pop out of nowhere. I've seen marketing agencies pop out of nowhere that never touched soccer in their life. You see Travis Scott going to every single soccer event. You see Justin Bieber playing pickup. Like so many things that you've never seen before in the soccer scene is happening this season, and it's all helping to to build up the anticipation for this World Cup, and it's very evident in just tickets alone. I mean, in myself and my growth, I think I've gained about 5,000 followers in just World Cup tickets, right? And that's so crazy because it is very fragmentalized. It's so hard to get tickets that I almost feel for the fans. And man, it's even for me, even me covering it, I haven't been able to buy my parents any tickets, right? So it's super wild. It's super daunting, exciting at the same time. But if you're not on this train 6 months ahead of time, good luck getting on this train 3 or 2 months ahead of time.
Yeah, I think those are all very, very great points. And to the exposure of this World Cup, because it's here, obviously Canada and Mexico as well. But the US, in terms of marketing and promo, that's one thing that obviously it takes care of itself. But the thing I've been telling people since this was announced is, like, you look at all of these other countries that had these World Cups, and they basically had to kind of build the infrastructure, right? In terms of stadiums, in terms of maybe even hotels, or just create things around the World Cup. You don't have to do that in the US. Like everything's already here. The stadiums out here, the hotels out here. Like it's just like let's get the people out there and who's willing to pay what.
Right.
And people are gonna have to be willing to pay to get to these events and these games, but it's all there. And because they're in these massive hub cities, because Mexico has such a big imprint on the tournament, like that opener is probably going to be absolutely incredible at Azteca. You have stadiums in Toronto that are going to be hosting as well. And on top of the fact that like Toronto could play in their home country up to like who knows what point of the knockout stages if things pan out the way they're supposed to. Mexico kind of almost the same thing. The US has 2 games in LA in the group stage, 1 in Seattle. Like these are going to be not only impactful moments for the game itself, but for these host nations to like put their best foot forward. And we know that's been a conversation going into it all the time. But when you start seeing how the fan interest is growing so rapidly, because the dates were already set, we knew when the draw was going to be, we know when the World Cup was going to be, but now it's like people are actually like, oh, we have to get on this like right now, or else like we're going to miss this train.
No, 100%. And you also have to give up your firstborn baby to get tickets too. Like it's not easy. It's not going to be inexpensive. We're almost looking back at the days of the Earthquakes having $18 tickets and thinking, man, this is it the same sport? Like there's no way, right? But yeah, it's going to be such a big event, and I hate to say this, it's going to be the biggest World Cup of all time. And I hate to say this because that's FIFA's tagline and FIFA this, and look how much money we're making. But as a fan and as someone that speaks to the culture in terms of soccer and everything as a whole, 100% this is going to be the biggest event the world has ever seen. And you better hop and you better not miss this because you're going to be kicking yourself the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's going to be a benchmark, man. It's going to be incredible. The amount of interest, the amount of money, like it's just gonna be insane. I can't wait. I mean, I was excited since the day it was announced, but now that it's only a few months away and things are starting to seem more real. And to your point, like you're starting to see all these agencies and people like everybody wants to be part of this because it's good for anybody's brand if they're involved with something this monumental. Let's talk a little bit about the U.S. men's national team because there was so much, I guess, criticism of Mauricio Pochettino when he took over, and the team obviously wasn't putting together great results, but they've had a little bit of a run that I feel like it's kind of changed a little bit of the perception. Granted, I don't think anybody knows who the starting 11 is right now, like confidently, or maybe what their approach is going to be in the World Cup, which is kind of good. Like whatever, man, it's going to be just a random thing when we see them and how they approach this. But in terms of how their group ended up and how kind of they're approaching this, and then they have these 4 friendlies set up on the way into the World Cup that are going to be massive because you could talk about them and the friendlies they've played and who they've played, but they have Belgium, Portugal, Senegal, and Germany in the lead up to the World Cup, which is a pretty good group of teams to prepare you after not having to qualify for this. But what do you feel like the vibe is now around the U.S. men's national team going into the tournament?
Yeah, honestly, I was talking about this with my friend, shout out Justin Ruderman, about this, where basically American fans want the best skilled 11 to be out there. And Pochettino came in and said, no. I want the best for my team to be out there. And that's been such a big transition for the U.S. fan. And they weren't seeing the results, and it was so hard for the U.S. fan to be understanding of what Pochettino was trying to do. And for them to go out and beat my parents' home country of Uruguay, 5-1, and yeah, it was something that a lot of American fans started to, as they trust the process, because you create position depth. You want to create players that are hungry to be a part of the squad. You want to create a culture leading up to this World Cup. Let us know there wasn't that dog culture with Greg Berhalter. No offense to him, but this is a different animal, a different era for this US team. Every single player is motivated to make this squad. Every single player is going to give 100% under Pochettino. And I think that's the main thing about this whole era of Pochettino. You may not see the best 11, that's the most skillfulest, but you're going to see the best 11 to represent the country and represent that badge, give you the best foot forward to try to win the game. And I think that adjustment period for the U.S. 17. I think with the results that he recently having, the results he has going forward, I think truly the USMNT is going to start to trust the process.
Yeah, and it's to the point where it's just talking about with Mascherano's, like you bring a coach of a certain nature or a certain background, and Argentino comes in with this confidence, and I think Pochettino from the beginning was like, this is more so about a culture and a mindset shift
Right.
before it is anything else, and people may have not liked that, but that's the reason why they hired him. They didn't hire another American coach to come in and kind of just be like, hey, let me plug and play. Like this was a whole revamp of what the approach was for U.S. soccer and the U.S. men's national team. And I think now you're finally starting to see that, you could put all the nonsense aside with the Gold Cup and things like that. Like what he says, it's time to focus on the World Cup. It's time to play, the opener, we have to play like a final. The second game, we have to play like a final. And the draw went pretty well for them. I'm going to put this graphic up here of the groups. If you're watching on YouTube, I am not going to read through all of this because this is a lot of teams, but the U.S. group, with Paraguay, Australia, and then a winner of a playoff, is not a terrible draw. Teams that they've beat in recent friendlies. Looking at these groups, Favi, is there any group that calls your attention? Any maybe potential matchups that call your attention? Because I like the US's group. I thought the Mexico group was pretty solid with South Africa and Korea. And then you're gonna have some groups that are very one-sided. To no surprise, Argentina has the easiest group of the tournament. Shocker there. Then you're gonna have teams like Spain having to play Cabo Verde, which is going to be crazy, or Haiti having to play against Brazil. But anything here that calls your attention from these groups?
Yeah, look, honestly, there's not really that group of death this year. Everything is so segmentalized that it honestly didn't happen this year, right? It wasn't possible group of death, and it's a bigger tournament now. So you get teams as good in certain. So no, I mean, I think every favorite in these groups should advance, and now that the thirds advance, every team truly a good chance of advancing, even if they have some hitters in their groups like Spain or Argentina.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's going to make for some fun group stages. Like for example, Spain versus Uruguay is one that I'm going to be watching. I think that one's going to be one where we're probably going to see that caliber in the knockout stages. Or another looking forward to is Portugal. Yeah, I think something that we've all been dying to see, and we get to see it on stage. But yeah, I'm more excited for the knockout stage games. I still think there's some gems in the group stages. That's for sure.
Yeah. Spain Uruguay is going to be played in Guadalajara, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's a venue, and it's going to be a great game.
Yeah, Colombia, Portugal in Miami is a massive, massive game. Obviously, I have rooting interest for many reasons there, but that's going to be the third game of the group stage where things could be decided on who wins that group. And like you mentioned, I think you could get through now with 3 points because of the way that the field is expanded. But some pretty good group stage games. England, Croatia, I believe it's being played in Dallas. That's a really good one too. And then when it comes to the knockout rounds, it's going to be high entertainment value, high chaos. So I hope you can feel the excitement behind the World Cup. If you are not on the wave, please get on the wave because even if you're just watching the games at a watch party at a bar at your friend's house, like this is going to be something unique that we have not experienced and our generation have not experienced, and definitely nobody has at the magnitude that it's going to be at. So tap in, man, tap in and enjoy. Favi, it was a pleasure. Thanks for being here, man. Like I said earlier, just keep continuing to grind, keep continue to be great. Always got the support here. Anything you want to finish off on, let the people know. Obviously, let them know where they could find you so they could interact with you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, if you're a fan of soccer in the U.S., it'd mean a lot to me if you follow Kickbase. It's my new project that I'm helping to launch in the States. We're gonna have a lot of fun, a lot of activations, so don't miss that wave either. But if you want to go to the World Cup, the last draw phase is open now. So make sure you make an ID and try to get those tickets because our biggest enemy are resellers. And if we can find to try to buy that retail and try to support other businesses rather than people trying to scalp, then 100% make sure you get those tickets and sign up for it, and make sure you everything you can to possibly get a ticket from retail.
Yeah, man, we gotta get in these lotteries and try our best to get hands on these tickets and make these games and experiences as fun as they're going to be, because we know the parties are going to be crazy. We need that to be reflected in the stadium. Before I do let you go, how do you feel about Uruguay in this tournament?
I truly think they're going to shock the world. I think they do very well playing against good teams and against bad teams. And I think with Spain in their group, I think they're going to shock the world, man. I think Spain is a young favorite, and I don't think they're used to playing CONMEBOL teams. And Uruguay is famous for chopping at guys like James and Neymar, and I think Yamin's going to get the same treatment. And I think Uruguay is going to shock a lot of people, and I think Uruguay is going to be the villain again, once again. And I think I like their chances getting out of the group stage. The game that I'm looking forward to is if it's going to be I think it's the quarterfinals, Argentina versus Uruguay in Miami. And if they both make it, that would be a crazy game.
Yeah, coming from somebody that was at the Copa America final
Yeah.
in Miami, yeah, that would be insanity. And it's Uruguay is always that role, and I think that they're very comfortable playing that role that you described. And it's always that one team that you're like, I'd rather not have to play them in this tournament like this. So it is going to be very interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll be tapped in as things progress throughout 2026, leading up to the World Cup. And if you're around, you will see these spaces on boots on the ground, as they say. I'm sure we will be making the rounds all over the place. Fabi, once again, man, thanks for joining me. I'll make sure that everything is tagged in the YouTube description. Sorry. Once again, if you're watching on YouTube, you see I got the Inter Miami Lionel Messi kit out of respect only. That's the only reason I'm wearing this. It is a nice jersey though. But hey, man, if I'm not back before the year ends, I probably won't, because I'm going on vacation again. Happy holidays, all that fun stuff. Happy New Year's. Shout out to our boy Justin, man, multiple time guest here on the pod. Always a real one. Shout out to Favi. Shout out to Kickbase. And shout out to y'all for listening. Until the next time, peace.